This past weekend, I got the privilege to go to the Nashville Superspeedway to see NASCAR's first race in the area in a decade. And I gotta say, I had a blast. But I also will admit that my thoughts don't accurately reflect what every single person thinks. My time there was different than everybody else's, and everybody else's was different than mine. So I really today want to look at really how good or bad many thought the Nashville weekend was, and how this can affect racing in the Nashville area for the next couple years and the foreseeable future. So today we're going to look at three aspects in depth and basically judge the weekend off of these. Number one, the racing. Number two, the fan experience. And number three, the outlook for Nashville's future after this weekend. So let's get to it. Starting up, we got the racing. I gotta say that I actually really enjoyed the racing. I thought that the racing wasn't gonna be that good. I thought it was gonna be very single groove. It was gonna be really hard to pass. And while it was kind of hard to pass, cars and trucks still were able to pass. And that's something that I think all fans can ask for. And something else I noticed too was the racing improved over the weekend. The start of the truck race was pretty damn boring. Aside from Matt Crafton and Johnny Sauter going back and forth, there really wasn't much to write home about the first half of that race. But as the drivers got acclimated to the track more in race conditions, the racing got better. The groove widened out as it did all weekend long, and they were able to put on a really, really good finish. So that right there was good. The Xfinity race was solid. I personally thought it was better than the truck race, and it was absolutely chaotic at the end. Drivers were able to go 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 wide during that race. And overall, I think it was a very, very solid race day. And then you got the Cup race, which in my opinion exceeded expectations. Again, NASCAR, even with the 750 horsepower package, has had trouble getting cars to pass, race side by side, and just all around have a good show. And while I don't think that this race is something that's going to be remembered for decades to come as an all-time great, mostly in part to Kyle Larson's domination, but I think that's a Kyle Larson and Hendrick thing more than a track thing, I think this race, though, was really, really good. There was a lot of battling throughout the pack. There were a lot of comers and goers, people charging to the front and also those falling back. For instance, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ran right through the top 10 early in the day and then even fell back later and then came back again. There were guys like Eric Almirola who would kind of fade throughout the day but peaked at the end in a lot of ways. So I think that the racing was a lot more solid than, say, a 1.5-mile track normally would be. So I would give the racing itself a very easy passing grade. I'd say a B on the weekend, which, again, I think is better than about 70% of the racing we usually see. So nothing to complain about there, at least in my book. Now, another big aspect is, of course, the fan experience. I want to say that the crew at Nashville went all out trying to get everything as big as they could, and track president Eric Moses has even said that they did plan with COVID policies in mind, so 2022 should be even bigger and probably better than this. But I gotta say, outside the track, when it came to amenities and it came to just fun things to do, the fan zone and everything the fans usually do was back in full force. And what was great too is that it was basically a normal weekend, back how it used to be before the COVID outbreak, which I absolutely loved. I loved going through and seeing everybody's faces, people talking, giant crowds. It was absolutely amazing to see. There was so much stuff around the track too to do, so there was some all around just great things being done that I think will make it fun and make it worth it for fans to come back next year when hopefully it's bigger and better. But there are some big things that need to be addressed. Number one, the fact that the traffic was awful. It took us about an hour to get out after the truck race, which only probably had about 10,000 people. I get that they probably can't have the roads and highways widened just for this, or at least it's not going to happen very soon, but there needs to be more of a plan on how to get people out of there in a timely manner. Whether that means adding different ways for them to go out, closing down different roads, or making every lane of the highway one way so it at least bottles in somewhere else for people to go so that traffic can be less congested around the track. There just needs to be something done that makes it easier for people to get in and out of the track. Because by Sunday on race day, it was awful. It was backed up for miles onto a lot of the highways that people actually were driving to the track on. People were getting trapped at different areas that were closed because it didn't say it was closed. So there needs to be a lot more communication between the local area and the government maybe that runs it and the track itself and NASCAR. Because there's a lot of people who probably won't come back due to how awful it was trying to get in and out of the track. It was in a lot of ways comparable to Kentucky Speedway's really disastrous start in 2011. So for a track that, in my opinion, has had some pretty good racing this past year, it's a shame that a lot of people are talking most about traffic, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And then also the fact that when they didn't allow coolers, as bad enough as that is, they then ran out of water in a lot of areas really fast during the race. Some people by lap 32 were even tweeting that certain stands had run out of water and drinks to have. And when the entire weekend, the weather was in the 90s and it was hot as hell and you could see people getting sunburnt just staying out 30 minutes in the sun, that's something that's unacceptable. That's something that deserves full criticism. And I think that there's only a few ways you can fix this. One, if you're not going to allow people to bring in their own drinks in mass, you need to order in mass so that you can have drinks at least last until the end of the race. They don't have to be there after the race, but at least through to the closing stages and finish of the day. Or you let people bring coolers back in. You take away this policy that's really pissed a lot of people off, and people can basically control their own lives and how they do this. And if something happens to them then, it's not your fault. They had every opportunity to prepare for themselves. So that's something there. The fan experience is very mixed, but the stuff that was really good was really good. And then the overall outlook for Nashville is the third and final thing that I really want to go over with this, because I think that there's a lot of positives here, but there might be some undertones that need to be addressed as well. Starting off, this was a sold-out crowd. Now, I think that should be expected, but it's still something in today's NASCAR that is really, really good to see, and it's really encouraging to see the Nashville area come out in force to support racing back in the area. 40,000 people had packed into the stand, and trust me, being in the stands, it was awesome to look both ways and just see people as far as the eye could see in the grandstands. So that right there was really good. And then also, when I was down in downtown Nashville on Saturday night, there was advertising for the race everywhere. There were billboards throughout the weekend all around Nashville promoting this race happening and basically telling people to watch this race. That's some awesome stuff there to see not only support around the rural areas of Lebanon, but also around the urban Nashville center where everyone is really congregating throughout the weekend. So it's good to see the city behind it. The energy because of this seemed pretty high, especially at the track. The energy was buzzing. Even with the 10-minute delay due to traffic, people still were really, really hyped up for this race. And there was just a lot, like I've said, of energy everywhere in this facility. But the big question that I got to ask is, how does this mesh with the Nashville Fairgrounds project? The fairgrounds is only about 40 to 50 minutes away from this track. These markets are going to overlap almost completely when it comes to drawing in fans. Now, I want this facility to succeed, but I also want the fairgrounds to be on the schedule. So there needs to be a plan of how to balance this, because from what it seems like, the people working at this track are expecting it to be in NASCAR's future for the long term. I have to admit, I do have questions on how they can make this work. Maybe keeping the dates further apart from each other would help. I think it actually would. That way that if someone wants to go to the Superspeedway race in the summer, they can. Or if they want to go to the fairgrounds, possibly in the fall at the end of the playoffs, they also can go to that. There's not really a pick and choose with it. I think that they can long-term have two races in the Nashville area. It's a big enough area. It's growing immensely. And on top of that, The fairgrounds more than likely will have great racing like it does in every series that it holds there. So having 2 tracks with great racing would be really, really good for the area. I do have to wonder, though, if any of the negative press due to the traffic issues could hurt the fairgrounds or help the fairgrounds effort. Because let's be real, around the fairgrounds area, it's a neighborhood. It's going to be really hard to park. It's going to be a lot of one-lane roads. There's going to be a lot of congestion. And I also have to ask, if this is really good racing, does that give ammunition to those not wanting NASCAR at the fairgrounds to say, hey, they have a track that they already enjoy 40 minutes away. Why do they need to move here? I think there's a lot more questions that don't have answers that have been brought up with this weekend than a lot of people are really letting on. Me personally, like I said, I hope the 2 can coexist because I would love to go to both of these races if that ever happens. But now, I want to hand this one off to you. What do you think about what happened with the Nashville Superspeedway this weekend? Do you think that it's a net positive for the sport, a net positive for the Nashville area? What are your thoughts overall on it? I really want to know because I'll be real, I wasn't on Twitter much. There wasn't much reception at the track, so I wasn't online much looking at what people were saying. I wasn't on Twitter at all tweeting out stuff during the race. I'm in the dark on what people think, and I haven't went back to look yet. So let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, subscribe to this channel, and join this channel on the memberships option if you really, really like it. Until next time, have a good one.